So welcome to the Life's Worth Living podcast. I'm your host, John Gossett. Welcome back for another week. We're so grateful to have you here. We want to give a shout out to the sponsor of our podcast, GTM Builders. If you're thinking of building a new home, check out gtmbuilders.com or visit one of their 4 model homes in the Twila Valley. They're great guys, build beautiful houses, and you should really check them out if you're in the market. Today's episode is brought to you by A. Warner Homes Real Estate. If you're thinking about buying or selling, interest rates are low, reach out to A. Warner Homes Real Estate at 801-867-5078. They're running a special right now. If you're a veteran or a first responder, they will pay for your appraisal and your home inspection. So again, reach out to A. Warner Homes Real Estate. So I'm super excited to have a guest on today, somebody that I've looked up to and listened to their podcast regularly for the last year and a half, 2 years. Todd Sylvester. He's got an incredible podcast. If you get a chance, subscribe to it, rate it, review it. It's called Todd Sylvester's Belief Cast. And man, I really appreciate your podcast because I have learned so much from your guest, from your story. And
thank you. Yeah.
I had this wish list when I started my podcast of people that I could maybe get to come out here and be on my podcast. You were on that list from the very get-go.
Oh, thank you.
And so when I reached out to you, I was so appreciative that you were willing to. It's kind of a journey coming out here. So
yeah, it's a long trek, but and we're here bright and early. But I'm grateful to be here, John, and thanks for all that you're doing. And I love that you're trying to bring awareness and help for people who are struggling. And so I'm glad to be on this show for you.
Well, and it's something that you're familiar with.
Yeah.
I mean, struggles and I think if in reality people were honest and they really let people in, we'd find out that there's way more out there that are struggling than we're aware of. And,
yeah, for sure.
And I think even this last year, 2020 has kind of been a wild one. And so with feeling disconnected and quarantining, staying home and some of those things, it's made it a little bit more difficult because we don't have that human connection.
Exactly.
And like you always talk about, connection is the opposite of addiction.
Yeah.
And so that's something we work with also out here, and you're probably well familiar with that. Addiction leads people to those dark places where they actually consider suicide. And so we have a lot of people we work with in that. My wife and I have worked in the addiction recovery program for the last 4 years, running a 12-step program out here too.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
So for our church, we've been doing that. And so it's been really awesome to kind of be in that circle as well. And so, but for the guests that haven't heard of you, would you mind backing up and kind of just telling us your story?
Yeah, you want me to just kind of start from the beginning? And
sure.
Yeah, it's quite the story, I guess. And I feel very fortunate to, like I said, to be here and to, hopefully my story will touch someone who's listening to this, and especially someone who feels, maybe depressed and hopeless, because I've been there and I used to hate living. I didn't want to be alive, but I can honestly look at you now and say I love living. But it took some work and it took some perspective and it took some people in my life to reach out and help me and I think we all need that growing up but I'm fortunate to be in this position and to be in a position to help others as well. So I really do believe that life happens for you, and I think it's hard to feel that way when we're going through a struggle, that this is happening for me. Mm-hmm. But when we can look back, I can see how everything that I've been through led up to actually sitting with you this very moment. And so I see it all as a part of the plan, so to speak, But I grew up in Cottonwood Heights, Utah. I went to Brighton High School, and growing up, I had a very loving family. My parents loved me. They said that often. They were really good to me. But we weren't a religious family. We didn't talk about drugs and sex and those kind of things. But I had a really good childhood. Overall, we just my parents just provided everything I needed, and sports was a big part of my life. was really into sports. That was kind of our religions. I played basketball and football and baseball growing up, soccer, and I loved it. I just, like I said, it was a really, really good childhood. And I learned at a very young age that I had this all or nothing mentality, which can be a really good thing, but it can also be a very destructive thing. And in 7th and 8th grade, I had made this decision in my mind. I just want to focus on basketball. These other sports are fun, but basketball was like something I would visualize and daydream about being an NBA basketball player, and I wanted to play for North Carolina college. I wanted a college scholarship to play there because Michael Jordan played there, and I just had all as a kid does, you have all these hopes and dreams. And so from 8th grade on, I just dedicated everything to basketball. And when I say dedicated, I would practice 2 or 3 hours every single day. I was just obsessed with it, and it was awesome. I just loved it. And my goal was to make the freshman team at Brighton High School. That was kind of my first initial goal. And so I try out, and I end up making the team, which was great, but we had 18 kids on the team, which meant I didn't get to play very much. We just had so many kids and so many good athletes, and I was like this short little skinny kid, but I practiced a lot, so I had some confidence with that, but these kids were bigger and stronger, and I was just trying to hang with them. Gotcha. But and so ended up making the team, like I said, but not playing very much just kind of fueled that passion to play even more or practice even more. And luckily, between my freshman and sophomore year, I grew like 7 inches.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was really good.
Yeah.
Because I was able to catch up to a lot of the kids, and, to be able to hang with them on the court, it really helped to be a little taller.
Yeah.
And so, but towards the end of my freshman year, it was about the month of May. School was still going. There was a 4-day weekend, and one of my friends invited me to go up to Bear Lake with him and his family. And I found out that I could go, and we ended up going up to Bear Lake. And as we pull into the campsite, everyone gets out of the car, and my friend holds me back, says, "Hold on, stay in here for a minute." I'm like, "What?" He said, "Wait a minute." And as the family, walked out and was checking out the campsite, my friend grabbed his backpack and he pulled out a 1/4 ounce of marijuana, which was basically a sandwich bag full. Yeah. I mean, it was just stuffed full. And I asked him, "What is that?" He goes, "It's marijuana." And he goes, "And we're going to smoke this." And I'll never forget it. He says, "You're going to love it." And so I didn't think twice. I'm like, "Sure, let's smoke it," Yeah. And sure enough, we ended up smoking that bag in 4 days. Wow. And I got high for the first time, and I fell in love with that, and that all or nothing mentality kicked in, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna smoke this for the rest of my life. That was like what I thought. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is fun, this is great, But little did I know that destructive road that was going to take me down. I was very innocent. About a week later, literally a week later, another friend of mine's parents went out of town for the weekend. And they asked me if I would if one of my family members would get us some beer for a party. So I asked this family member, and long story short, this family member bought us like 10 cases of beer.
Wow.
And that's a lot of beer. I mean, that is a lot of beer, especially for your first time. And, so we throw this party. Well, I end up drinking that night to the point where I black out. I mean, it's the first time I really drank to get drunk. I had my dad had a wet bar in the basement, and from the time I was like 11 and 12, I would go behind the wet bar and just kind of take little sips off some of the bottles. I didn't get drunk or anything, but I kind of fell in the rush with it. I was like, whoa, and so I knew what alcohol was, and so anyway, that night I just drank so much, and the next day I wake up, and my friends are like, "Oh, you were crazy last night. You were talking to these girls. You were doing this. You were so funny, this and that." And it started feeding my ego. And I thought, wow, man, we want acceptance, right? Yeah. So my friends are like, I'm thinking, dang, this is how I'm going to get my validation. Yeah. And so in my mind, I thought, I'm going to smoke pot every day, and I'm going to drink every weekend. And so from that point forward, that's exactly what I was doing.
Wow.
And so I just started going down that road. Basketball is still my passion. I'm practicing 2 or 3 hours every day. Like I said, I grew 7 inches between freshman and sophomore year. I had practiced so much and got so good between freshman and sophomore year that I made the starting point guard for the sophomore team. I played some JV and a little bit of varsity. We took state my sophomore year. My junior year, we took a second in state. I led the team in every category, scoring and steals and free throw percentage, and just things were going great. Senior year, I got voted team captain with 2 other kids, and we ended up taking first in state again.
Wow.
So we just had a good run. I played with some amazing athletes, and I feel very fortunate to be a part of that amazing team. But if we jump back between freshman and sophomore year, I started, you get kind of bored with just smoking pot every day and drinking on the weekends. And I started drinking at lunchtime. Me and my friends would go home to my house because I knew my dad had the wet bar, and we would go drink at lunchtime. Gotcha. And I started smoking. Like I said, I would smoke throughout the week, but then I started doing other drugs, and things progressed. By junior year and senior year, I'm popping. We called them cross tops. It's basically speed. Yeah. We'd pop those, and I started doing psychedelic mushrooms and cough syrup and you name it, anything I could get my hands on at that point. Again, it was that kind of this all or nothing mentality. And by the time my senior year came around, I had this reputation as a partier. Mm-hmm. And when my parents would go out of town, I would throw a big, like a kegger. We'd get a keg, and for listeners, if you don't know what that is, it's a big keg of beer, and I would throw these big parties at my house. And again, friends thought this was the coolest thing, and again, it would just validate. Yeah. Okay, I feel accepted. Yeah. And but things really started to change when my senior year came around. I noticed this voice in my head, and I've had this voice. We all have this voice, but it got really loud. My senior year, it was this voice that was telling me that I was no good, I was pathetic, I looked funny, no girl will ever want to be with me. And I just felt insecure. And I think most kids feel insecure in junior high and high school. We're trying to find our place. Exactly. But things magnified for me in that way, in a negative way. And I only felt somewhat normal if I was high or drunk or partying. Again, I was always looking for that validation. But when I was in school and this and that, I just walked the hallways feeling, less than. And this voice in my head. And I became very depressed. And I had thoughts of suicide. When I was, when you're in junior high and high school, you hear of kids, and this is back in the 80s, we would hear a kid or two who had taken his life. And it was always like this weird feeling of like, oh my gosh, that's so scary. But then my senior, I started having thoughts of that, like, man, maybe I'll just end my life, And I never had planned it out my senior year or anything like that, but I just had these thoughts. And anyway, we take state my senior year. Like I said, the final game during state, I played the best game of my life. It was just everything kind of came together for some reason that night. Nice. And we beat Hillcrest High School up at the University of Utah, and we beat them by 20 points, and it was just a great night. And I played really well, and it was great. But that night I ended up, we threw a party because we took state and got wasted again and snorted cocaine and just got involved with that. A week later, though, I got offered a full ride scholarship. Nice. And that was one of my goals. And I thought, wow, I got that. I mean,
it's really coming together.
It's all coming together, So that was a good thing. But still, that I was feeling, insecure, down, and depressed, and somewhat at times even hopeless. And at that age, I didn't reach out to anyone. All my friends partied. I didn't dare talk to my family, not because they wouldn't have talked to me, but it was more just, I was just, isolating, not connecting, right? Mm-hmm. And so got the full ride scholarship. In my mind went to, well, I've got the scholarship in hand. There's only like a month and a half, 2 months left of my senior year. I'm gonna party like I've never partied before. And so I want to share an example, and not to glorify this in any way, but I think it will help the listeners understand how bad things got for me. We were at a party, And this was like, I think it was right before graduation. It might have been right after, but I think it was right before graduation. And the same friend whose parents went out of town the first time I got drunk, he threw another party. And we were at this party. It felt like the whole senior class was there. And we're drinking. And then one of my friends pulled out a beer bong. And, a beer bong's a tube that you hook to an end of a funnel, a 2-foot tube. It's about 1 inch in diameter. And it allows you put any liquid in there, you lift it up over your head, and it shoots it down your throat like really fast. And so we got in this big circle, and everyone's going to try to one-up everybody, right? You're going to do 1 beer, this person's going to do 2, and it's just going to go around this circle, and everyone's going to try to do more than the person before. And anyway, it's going around, and in my mind, I thought, I'm going to blow everyone away when it gets to me, because they won't believe this. Anyway, and again, just to feed my ego and try to have everyone look at me that I'm the crazy guy, right? And it gets to me, and I pour in a 1/5 of vodka. Wow. And my friend next to me goes, don't do that, And I didn't even hesitate. I lifted it up over my head, and I drank a 1/5 in 2 seconds. Wow. And I didn't know it then, but my blood alcohol level would have been 0.52. Lethal is 0.41. I should have died. That's the last thing I remember. I didn't wake up until 6 p.m. the next evening. And one of the most pathetic scenes, I'm covered from head to toe in blood. I'd been puking blood, I guess, all night and all day, all that next day. And I'm laying in this living room holding a toilet seat. And again, just covered. I can barely talk. It felt like someone shoved a knife through my throat. I'm still wasted. I didn't go home that night, and I'm sure my parents are now panicking where I'm at. Sure enough, they had the cops out looking for me. And my friends, guess they were all going, that's the craziest thing we've ever seen. Again, feeds my ego. But I was really in a rough place. Yeah. And I share that with your listeners, not to glorify that, but that's how bad things got. I always had to be like this crazy guy because I felt that that's how I got people to accept me. And I thought it was cool that I was this, got this reputation, Go
and big or go home, huh?
Yeah. And so, anyway, things continued from there. I just kept on partying, kept drinking, kept doing hardcore drugs. And anyway, the summer now comes. I start practicing with the team that I got the scholarship with. And I wasn't playing well. I mean, mentally, spiritually, physically, I'm a mess. I'm just like depressed, down. I don't have confidence. I hadn't been practicing like I normally had been practicing. So I'm playing with these guys that are, bigger, stronger, faster. And I'm struggling hanging with them. About 2 weeks into practice, the coach pulls me into the office and he sits me down just like this, just one-on-one. And he just looks at me and says, "What's going on?" And when he said that, I knew I was in trouble. And I just said, "Coach, I know I'm not playing well. But I'll try harder. I'll work harder." And he says, "Todd, I don't have time to mess around. This is the big boy leagues now, and there's other kids who have walked on that obviously want this more than you." And he goes, "I'm sorry to tell you, I'm taking away your scholarship." Wow. And when he said that, I just lost it. I started to cry. I literally got on my knees and begged this coach, "Give me another chance. Please don't take away my scholarship." And he's like, "I'm sorry." And my first thought went after that was to my dad, like, how am I going to tell my dad? My dad's going to be so disappointed. My dad provided all these opportunities for me to be good at sports, and especially basketball. He sent me to every basketball camp, paid all this money. He just really loved. He took pictures at every game. This was like, he kind of just lived through me through sports. And I just was... I just felt devastated that I was going to have to face him to say that it's gone. And then my next thoughts went to, how am I going to tell all my friends? I've been bragging to everyone, I got a scholarship, and now I'm going to have to go, well, I don't anymore, And so that became a very dark time. And it just kind of fueled more partying, more drinking, more drugs. And again, but I start feeling really depressed. I became this angry drunk at this point. We'd throw parties and I would punch holes through the wall with my fists. I would throw chairs through windows. I put my head through the wall once. And really what was going on is inside I was hurting so bad that when I would drink, alcohol is like a truth serum. It magnifies what you're really feeling. Yeah. And so I was hurting so bad, so when I would drink, man, it would just come out, and I didn't care who was in the room. I would out of the blue, I would destroy this table. And people were looking at me, what are you doing? And I was just so angry and hurt and depressed. And anyway, I ended up trying out at several other colleges here in Utah, and then even out of state. I went to a few others and got cut from every single one of them. Mm-hmm. And that was depressing. And I found myself living in a home down in Orem with 5 other guys, and it was just this big party house. And I was attempting to go to school down there at Utah Valley Community College. It was a community college at the time. But I wasn't, I would sign up for classes, but I wouldn't go. Or I'd go a few times and then I'd just drop out. Mm-hmm. And the partying got worse. And I was, at this point, I'm doing every drug. I'm drinking every single day. At this point, I'm addicted. I'm an alcoholic. And I didn't know where to turn. All my friends party, I knew my family loved me, but I felt like, and it wasn't their fault. This was me more of, I just isolated, and I felt like I couldn't talk to them. And just, again, a really dark place. And so I'll never forget it. It was a Thursday. I remember it was a Thursday, and this reality slapped me upside the head that basketball's, it's over. That dream is gone. Like for you to play college or, and that reality sunk in, because that was also how I kind of found my purpose in life. And now all of a sudden that's gone. Yeah. And at this point, I've got friends now who are graduating from college. They're married. They've got kids on the way. I'm doing nothing. I don't have a college degree. I'm not playing basketball. I'm, working as a bartender. I'm drinking every day. And I just feel, like a loser, to be totally honest. And that voice in my head's like, you're pathetic, you're no good, and why don't you just end your life? And I'll never forget it. That Thursday, I said, I'm done. I'm going to end my life because my purpose is gone. And again, just this depression, this darkness that I was feeling was just overwhelming. And so I had planned my suicide, and I planned it out because my dad had a shotgun. There were some shells at the house. I knew where they were. And I thought when I go home on Friday, because I would go home on the weekends. When I say home, I was living in Orem with all those guys, this big party house. And I would come up here to Salt Lake and work as a bartender. And I thought, well, Friday when I go home, I'm going to end my life. And so Friday comes. I'm driving down University Avenue to get on the freeway. Well, right before the freeway, there's the entrance to Utah Valley Community College. And as I'm getting ready to head on the freeway, I have this thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go over to the lunchroom over here at Utah Valley Community College, where me and my friends would always hang out in the lunchroom, and they had these big round tables, that 12 people could sit at, and everyone would go and just kind of socialize and hang out and check out girls and do what you do. And for some reason, I just thought it must have been around lunchtime, because I turned in there, and I don't know if it was like subconsciously this is my way to say goodbye to my friends. I don't know. So I go in there and I sit down at this, like I said, these big round tables. I'm sitting like here, and, all my friends are around the table, and there was these 2 LDS girls sitting next to me. And now these 2 girls, for whatever reason, would always sit at our table. And they were kind of driving me nuts. They were just seriously 2 of the most positive girls. They were happy, they were fun, they were always joking. They didn't judge me or any of us for partying, but I judged them. I would rip on their religion. I would give them a hard time about what they believed. And they would just laugh, let it roll off their backs. And I think the reason why that bugged me is they were so happy and I was miserable. Yeah. And I just was like...
That's the last thing you need, huh?
Yeah. I know. I'm just like... But these girls were great. And I'm sitting this very day where I'm thinking about going home and ending my life. I'm sitting here, like I said, my friends are on this side. These 2 girls are here. I'm just in my own head. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just over here sitting there just, saying nothing. And I overhear these 2 girls on this side talking about fasting and prayer. I'd never heard that before. I didn't even know what fasting was. I honestly didn't. I'm like, what is fasting? And that word, for some reason, just like hit me right here in the heart. I was like, what is that? But I didn't dare say anything. I just thought, well, if they get up, maybe I'll go ask them. Anyway, everyone starts to get up to go where they're going. These two girls get up and start walking that direction. I thought, I'm going to go ask them. So I stood up, and I'll never forget it, as they're walking, I was like even nervous to tap them on the shoulder. I was like, maybe I won't. And then I thought, no, I will. So I said, hey, guys. They turn around, what's going on? What's up? And I said, hey, were you guys just talking about fasting and prayer? And they kind of like laughed, like, yeah, why do you want to know? Like, are you going to rip on us for that too, kind of thing, you know? And I'm like, no, I'm serious. I have no idea what that even is. And I go, I don't even know what fasting is. Can you explain that to me? And they said, yeah, well, in our religion, we fast once a month, and we start the day with a prayer, and we go the whole day without food or water or drinks. And as they're saying this to me, I'm going, what is the point of this? I'm like, and they said, we end with a prayer. And I finally asked him, what's the point? You know, because in my head, I'm thinking, this is weird. And I'll never forget it. I can't remember which girl it was, but she looks me right in the eyes. She says, if you want help from God. And when she had said that, talk about, it just, again, hit me right here. And I was like, whoa. Because, see, I wasn't raised religious. I didn't believe in God, but I did not believe in God, if that makes sense. You know, I was kind of like, I didn't know.
The whatever, you know.
Whatever. And because we didn't talk about those things growing up. I mean, I knew, you know, what religion was, and I've heard people talk about God and that stuff. But when she had said that, I thought, wow, is there a God, and would God help me? And when they told me, I just told them, thank you for sharing that, and I walked away. And as I walked away, I thought, you know what? I'm going to try this. And so instead of going home, I decided to stay down in Orem in this house, this party house. And by the way, when I say this party house, I mean this house was, I call it, it was nasty. Like, we didn't clean it. We had this big brick wall, a fireplace. So when we were done with our beer bottles, we'd just take them and huck them.
Really?
Let them shatter. I mean, we didn't clean it. There were holes in the wall where we punched holes. I mean, it was nasty. But anyway, and the reason why I want to point that out is this house was an outward manifestation of my inner world. I really believe our outer world mirrors our inner world. If our inner world is in chaos, our outer world typically looks the same way. And this house mirrored what was going on with me. And so, anyway, I decide to go, you know, and stay the weekend in that house. And I must have called in sick to work. I don't even remember that piece, but I didn't go work as a bartender that weekend. And I thought, I'm going to give this a try. So now Saturday comes, and the girl said, start with a prayer. I knew what prayer was, but I didn't want any of my housemates or my roommates to see what I was doing. So I go into this teeny little coat closet, and there was coats in there because it's a coat closet.
Yeah.
And it literally, I have to get on my knees because I can't stand up. I mean, it's actually, you can't fit in there standing up. So I get on my knees, close this door. I'm crammed in this little, and I say a prayer. And all I said was, God, if you're there, I need help. That's all I said. And I did what those girls said. I went, I think I made it till about noon. And I was just like, but it was the first time I didn't smoke pot. I didn't pop a pill. I didn't have a drink. I didn't since Bear Lake.
Wow.
And
that's when you realize that the word fast doesn't mean it's going to happen fast. Huh?
Right. Oh boy. Yeah. And so I make it till about noon, and I was just like, I can't go any longer, you know, and I was even like, you know how like you get hangry, you get hungry, you know, you're hungry and you're, ugh. But then I wasn't doing drugs or anything like that. And my roommates were like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. I wouldn't even tell them. I didn't talk. I was just kind of to myself, but inside I was just like, oh, I hope this works kind of thing. And anyway, so I go back into the closet because the girls said end with a prayer. So I thought, okay, I'll do what they said. I go back in that same closet, close the door. I get on my knees, and I just said, God, I just did this fast. If you're there, I need help. And that's all I said again. But I waited. I thought, if God really is real, he's going to show up. Or there'll be some kind of sign. And I sat there in that closet. It felt like forever. It was probably just a couple minutes, and nothing happened. And I'll be honest with you, the girls didn't tell me what to expect. Like, hey, prayers take time sometimes, and you know how they get answered. A lot of times it's through other people. And anyway, you got to understand, I was so naive of this whole process, but nothing happened. And I thought, I was actually kind of upset. Well, there's my last ditch effort. I ended up getting wasted that day and that night, and I still had thoughts of ending my life, but it kept me from actually doing it. But I was kind of wrestling with back and forth, just like with it, and I don't know what was going on, and I was still really struggling. About a month after that fast, I get a phone call from a friend who I played basketball with Brighton. His name was Rich. He was one of the team captains our senior year along with me, and he was just a great guy. I mean, he was one of these guys that everyone kind of looked up to. He was, the best basketball player on our team, but also just a good guy. And not that he was perfect, but he wasn't out doing drugs and partying and stuff like that. But I hadn't talked to him since high school, and he. We had touched base. I should say we touched base a little bit through a letter. He was on a mission, and he had since come back from a mission. He was now married, and he was living. I think he was living in an apartment down in Orem. And I get this random phone call about a month after my fast from him. And I don't even know how he found this place. You got to remember, this is before cell phones and all that. And like the phone on the wall actually rang. Remember when the phone would ring, we'd get all excited. Who's calling? Yeah. We'd all run down there, or we'd be like, oh, don't answer that. We don't know who it is. But anyway, he tracks me down. He asked where I'm at. I said, I'm down here in Orem. He said, I'm down here too. He goes, hey, I would love to catch up. Would you mind coming over? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I thought, okay, again, I hadn't talked to him for a long time, and I thought that was strange. So I go over to his place, and he opens the door, and he's got this real serious look on his face, And I bring that up because this guy is usually just goofing around, very positive, just loves to tell jokes and stuff, and just one of those guys. But he was real serious, and I thought, oh, okay, what's going on? He goes, come on in, and we sit down on the couch, and we just start kind of weather talk, catching up, just surfacey stuff. Yeah. And then he all of a sudden starts saying all these good things about me, like, Todd, you're going to help so many people in your life. You're such a good person. And he kept saying, you're going to help kids. You're going to do, and I'm like, what is this dude talking about? I'm like, and I started feeling really uncomfortable, and I'm just like, what is this guy? I finally stopped him. I said, Rich, what are you talking about? I go, you have no idea. My life is a mess right now. And you're saying all these things. I don't know why you're saying it, but, I don't know. Please stop almost. I didn't say those exact words, but that's really what I was thinking. Like, knock it off. Quit saying all these nice things. And I'm like, why are you saying this? He said, Todd, he goes, I didn't go to work today because I have a message I need to share with you today. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, what? Is everything okay? He's like, no, everything's fine. And he goes, I need to tell you something. And I'm like, okay. And I can tell he's nervous. He's like sitting there, and we have this like long, awkward pause with no one's talking, and I'm just sitting there waiting for him to say something. But I can tell he's sitting there, and he takes this deep breath, and he finally looks at me and said, Todd, he goes, the Lord came to me last night and said, we need you on our side today. And when he said those words, I can't describe it. It was this feeling of from head to toe. The way I can describe it now is I felt the love of God. It's the only way I can express. I mean, and I don't know, your audience, if you believe in a higher power or God, but I all I can say is that I felt this love. But I'll be honest with you too, at the same time, I hadn't felt something like this. It almost scared me. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. It was almost like, this feels amazing, but like, what's going on here, right? And my mind went back to, how your mind can rewind quickly? It went back to when I was in that closet asking God for help. So I tell Rich, I fasted about a month ago, and I asked God for help, and he points right in my face, and he says, this is your help. And I was just, I mean, you know, I'm tearing up, and I'm sitting there, and he's tearing up, he's sitting there, and we're just sitting there. And I'm just blown away, and I'm thinking, did I really just get an answer from that fast that I did a month ago, you know?
What a good guy he is, because you know what? How many times do you get promptings and think you're supposed to do it and you just don't do it? So thank goodness he did.
Yeah, and yeah, props to Rich. I'm telling you, that would have been, I mean, we hadn't been talking. He didn't know really where I was at in life. I mean, I'm sure he probably he knew that I was partying in high school. I'm assuming he knew that I was probably struggling. But, I mean, for him to do that was to say that, because he probably didn't know how I was going to react to something like that.
Yeah.
But I was just blown away. But and then we sit there, and I just kind of said, well, now what? And he said, he goes, I want you need to go see your bishop and tell him everything you've been doing. And I'm like, I don't have a bishop. He goes, you do, you just don't know it. And so he gets up and goes, and we're just sitting there, just gets up and he gets on the phone, and he's over there for seriously like 45 minutes. I'm just sitting there, and he's talking to people. I don't know even who he's talking to.
Yeah.
Finally comes over and he goes, okay, I got you an appointment with your bishop in where your home ward would be in Willow Creek. And I'm like, I don't want to go talk to this guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do I need to go talk to this guy? He goes, you need to tell him everything you've been doing. I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah,
and Rich is one of those guys that'll get in your face and make you commit. He goes, you got to promise me you're going to show up. And I'm like, okay, I will. And so the next day, I pull into this church parking lot in Willow Creek here in Salt Lake, and sure enough, there's one car there, and I'm like, oh, that's that bishop's car. And I'm like, and I literally turn back around, I can't do this. And I'm like, I'll just tell Rich I made it to the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, he wouldn't accept that. I thought, okay, I'll go in there, I'll listen to what this guy has to tell me, and I'm out of there in 5 minutes. So I walk in there. This guy's name's Bishop Taylor. Nicest guy you'll ever meet. I sit down, and he just looks at me and says, well, tell me what's going on. Doesn't say another word. He just sits there and waits for me. It's kind of like those sales call, the first person who speaks loses. I'm like, okay, well, and I just start slowly kind of telling what happened with me and Rich and why Rich reached out to him. And I'm thinking I'm going to just hurry and quickly get out of there. And I don't know what it was, but I just started unloading on this guy. I started telling him everything, the drugs, the alcohol, the stuff I was doing with girls, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, everything. I just unload. And I'm sitting there thinking, what is this guy thinking about me right now? I end up spending 3 hours in this guy's office.
Wow.
And when I get done, he just, again, smiles. He goes, I got 4 things. Here's what we're going to do. I got 4 things I want you to do. I'm like, okay. And he goes, do you think you could say 1 prayer a day like you did when you were in that closet? Do you think you could do that? I go, yeah, I could probably do that. And he goes, hands me these set of scriptures. He goes, have you ever read these before? I go, never, nope. He goes, I want you to read 1 verse a day. Do you think you could do that? I didn't even know what a verse was. I kid you not. That's how naive I am. He actually opens up, this is a verse. He goes, I don't even care if you understand it. He goes, just read 1. I go, yeah, I could probably do that. And then he goes, I need you to be honest with me when we meet. And I said, okay, we're meeting? He goes, yeah. He goes, when we meet, I need you to tell me everything. And I go, well, I just told you everything, so that should be easy. He goes, if you lie, cheat, steal, anything, just tell me. I go, yeah, I can do that. And he goes, and I want to meet with you once a week for a year. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. And he says, we'll take it a week at a time. But again, he goes, I need you to be honest with me when we meet, though. And he taught me something so powerful. We all understand honesty is important and how good it is, and because we stress it all the time, right? Yeah. I'll share with my clients every day that I meet with that if they're honest with themselves, they will never relapse. And he taught me such a powerful thing. And I just started meeting with him, and I was just honest with him. And I met with him. I started meeting with him once a week, every week. He became my rehab. And I meet with him, and I'm like, yeah, I drank every day this week. Yep, I smoked pot every day still. And we meet, we're about the eight and a half month mark before I can look at him and said, I made it 3 days clean this week. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still struggling. That voice in my head still saying, you're pathetic, you're no good, you're never going to make it, you'll never be clean, you can't stop partying. I mean, that's what the voice, and it was up and down, man. I'm still feeling depressed at times, and I'm just thinking, is this even working? And I'm still a bartender, which is not a good idea if you're trying to quit drinking. I don't recommend that to anybody. But as a bartender, you get tips from people that are sitting at the bar, right? Mm-hmm. And then also would get tips from the waiters and waitresses because I was making their drinks too, for their customers. And I would get all their tips, and I'd get a lot of change, and I'd keep this change in the cup holders of my car, right? And about this 8.5 month mark where I'm still struggling, I had finally made it 3 days clean, but I'm still, still not done. I have about $40 worth of nickels, dimes, and quarters in my cup holders. And I'd use that for gas money. Sometimes I'd buy drugs with it. But I'd always keep the change, and I'd keep the dollar bills in my wallet, but then I'd keep the change in my cup holders. And about this 8.5 month mark, I'm still struggling. It was a Saturday, and I'm driving on this big windy road. It's called Newcastle. And as I'm driving on this road, I see this little girl selling lemonade, right? No big deal. I drive right on past. And then all of a sudden I have this impression come over me. And it was almost as if I heard the voice said, turn around and give all your money in your car to this little girl. I thought, whoa, that will be cool. And I'm not kidding you. I flip a Yui. I turn around. I pull up to this little girl selling lemonade. I roll down my window, and this cute little girl, she's in 4th grade. And I said, how much? She said, 25 cents. I said, I'll take one. So she pours it, hands it to me, and I put it on my dashboard, and I tell this little girl, hold your hands out like this. So she does. She's just sitting there smiling, and I start scooping all this change in her hands, and she's freaking out. She's like, no way. I'm like, hold on, I got more. It takes me like 9 scoops. I'm not kidding you. $40 worth of nickels, dimes, and quarters. Just, and she's just like, no way, freaking out. I go, I got more. And I just keep, and I'm picking every little, I'm picking every little one out to her. And the last pile, she finally throws it on her table, and she takes off into her house. And I'm thinking she's going to go tell her parents some dude just gave her $1 million, right? And I'm like, wow, that was incredible. And I pull away. And as I pull away, I cry like I've never cried before in my entire life. Have you ever cried so hard, John, where you feel like you're cleansing your soul? This was one of those soul-cleansing cries. I have to pull my car over, and I put it in park. I put my face in my hands, and I just sob. And because when you're a drug addict, you become very selfish. I think human nature, a lot of times we're selfish, but man, when you're a drug addict, it's all about you. I've heard a friend say, and I stole this from my friend, it's the disease of me. I'm going to rob from you. I'm going to cheat you. I will lie to you to get what I want. Mm-hmm. And for the first time that I could ever remember, I actually did something for someone else. I made this girl's decade.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, seriously. And I'm not kidding you. I cried for like 20 minutes just parked on the side of the road, and I just sob. And it was like all this hurt was coming out. And in that moment, I felt like I mattered. In that moment, I wanted to be clean. In that moment, I loved who I was. In that moment, my soul was on fire. I have one of my favorite quotes. I have it on my wall in my office. It's by Ferdinand Foch. It says, the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. This lit my soul on fire. And that all or nothing mentality kicks back in. And I thought, if that little girl is there next Saturday, I'm giving her all my money. So all week I'm working as a bartender still, and I'm saving all my money, thinking, hoping she'll be there so I can give my money to her. I'm not kidding you. I felt like I couldn't wait. So the next Saturday comes, sure enough, I pull up, she's out there, and she recognizes me, and she's like jackpot, here comes the money guy, right? And I give her like $20 in ones. The next Saturday I give her $30 in quarters. The next Saturday I give her $15 in quarters. This goes on for 2.5 months.
Wow.
And I just pull up and I just give her all my money. And every time I pull away, I cry again. I just start to cry. It was the most incredible feeling I had ever felt. It was greater than any high that I've ever experienced in my life. No drug could give me what I was feeling, that connection that we were talking about. And you know, it was amazing. I couldn't wait to give her all my money, you know. And so after about this 2.5 months, I decide I'm actually going to go to church. And what's funny, the bishop didn't tell me to go to church. So I wasn't going to church. I was just doing those 4 things, you know, sporadically, but I was trying to do those 4 things he asked me to do. Yeah. You know, the 2 that I was really consistent with is I met with him once a week and I was being honest with him. The other 2, you know, was hit or miss, but I was trying to still pray and read a verse, but I wasn't going to church or anything. But I thought, I'm gonna go check it out. So I'm scared to death. I get ready for church, which I don't normally do. I don't even know how to tie a tie. I'm literally like, I don't even think I wore a tie, honestly. So I go to church and I walk in and I go in the very back corner. I don't want anyone to see me, and I'm honestly thinking I'm gonna stay for a few minutes, and if you know, I'll just check this out for a second and then I'm out. That was where my head was. Well, as I'm sitting there, you're checking out the people. I look around, and on the other side of the chapel, there's that little lemonade girl with her mom.
No way.
And she sees me, and she starts waving like this, and she's, Mom, there's the guy. There he is over there. And I'm like waving, I'm smiling. My heart's kind of pounding. I'm going, whoa, I'm kind of nervous. So I end up staying. And when church was over, here they come walking over towards me, and again my heart starts pounding, like doo doo doo, and I'm just like, and I'm fighting back tears even. I'm just like, whoa, what is going on here? And the mom comes walking up, she's crying, and she just walks up and hugs me, and she's up here in my ear, and she says, Todd, thank you so much for what you've done for my daughter. And I say, oh, you have no idea. This has been for me. You don't know what it's done for me. And she says, no, my daughter was saving for a trampoline. You put her over the top. She got her trampoline. She just thinks you're like the greatest thing ever. And she's sitting right there just smiling at me. And I'm like, again, I go, you have no idea what this has done for me. And then they said, we have a favor to ask you. I said, what's that? She said, on Wednesday, there's a daddy-daughter date. She would really like you to go as her date. And I'm like going, and I'm sitting there going, what? And I said, well, what about her dad? You know, and she said, well, you know, we got divorced when she was younger. He's not a part of her life. She would really like to go, though. Would you take her? And little did the mom know she's asking this drug addict to take her 4th grade daughter to some random thing, you know, and she doesn't even know me. And I'm like, which she found out years later, which is another funny story. We kind of laughed at it later. Anyway, so I say yes. I walk away, and I'm going, why did I say yes? But I couldn't say no with that little girl just staring at me, smiling. And I'm like, why did I say yes? Because, again, you got to understand, I still had no confidence in myself. You know, I was still struggling, you know. Anyway, so I go pick this girl up on Wednesday, because it's on Wednesday, and it's a picnic up at Big Cottonwood Canyon, up one of the campsites up there. So I pick her up. I don't even know her, other than I was giving her money. That was it. And you know, we're driving up. I'm scared. My heart's pounding. I don't even know how to talk to her. We're like, there's awkward silence, you know. And I'm like, hey, how was recess today? And, you know, stuff like that. I don't even know what to say to her, you know. Anyway, we pull up to the campsite, picnic site or whatever, and we're kind of late. And I don't know her. I don't know anyone up there. We walk in. I'm just like, oh, my God, why did I say yes to this? Seriously, that's what was going on. Yeah. I'm like, oh my, I don't belong here. I don't fit in. And we're sitting there, and they start playing games, you know, and all the dads are there with their daughters. Again, I don't know anybody. And they start playing games, and one of the games was, how well do you know your dad? How well do you know your daughter? Like, favorite color, favorite food, favorite movie. And I look at her, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you know, we can't do this, because we don't know each other. Yeah. She says, her name's Lindy. Lindy says, let's just guess. I kid you not. And this girl, like, had confidence like no other. Like, she's just like, you know,
she's rolling with it.
Oh, yeah, she's just rolling with it. And she's doing great. She goes, let's just guess. I'm like, all right. I kid you not, John. We almost get every answer correct. We're, like, high-fiving each other. People are probably thinking we're cheating. I mean, I'm just like, is this really happening?
Wow.
I'm just blown away. And it was so surreal. I'm sitting here going, I'm used to waking up hungover with throw up all over me in some of the worst situations, had done some of the worst things the night before, and here I am now with this pure innocent girl, and we're having hot dogs and Kool-Aid. I'm just like, am I in the Twilight Zone? That's what it felt like, seriously. But it was so, at the same time, so amazing, but it just felt so uncomfortable because I wasn't used to it. Then they gather everyone in to say a blessing on the food, which that was weird to me. I'm like, is there something wrong with the hot dogs? Like, why do you have to bless it? That was weird to me because I didn't grow up blessing food. Yeah. And again, you got to understand, I'm naive. I'm an infant in all this. So I'm watching what people are doing. Oh, okay, we fold our arms. Okay, people are bowing their heads. And this guy just says this simple little prayer on the hot dogs and Kool-Aid. No big deal, right? This is where everything changed for me forever. During the prayer, I kind of hear this voice in my head, but it's a different voice. And I know it was from God. It said, Todd, you're in the right place, doing the right thing. You made an impact on this girl's life that she'll never forget, and I love you. And I don't know how to explain it again. It was that love of God from head to toe. Every cell in my body was on fire. I lose it. I'm bawling in this prayer. The prayer gets over, and they're all looking at me like, dude, it's just hot dogs, relax, And I'm not kidding you. I'm sobbing. I don't know anybody, but I can't hold it back. I'm just like... And Lindy's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, these are happy tears. And I'm telling everyone, these are happy tears, folks. And I'm thought, oh, these guys think I'm a weirdo. But that's when I knew, John, that I will never touch drugs again. I will never drink again. I will do my best to never lie again, cheat, hurt, manipulate. And I want to help kids like her for the rest of my life. That's where I'm all or nothing, right? Yeah. That's where that all or nothing mentality kicked in. And from that point forward, that connection with God, that connection with people, it's just started to grow and expand. And I ended up meeting with that bishop for a year and a half.
Wow.
And this, like I said, he was my rehab. Yeah. Bishop Taylor, I'm telling you, shout out to Bishop Taylor. That dude, I'm telling you, was amazing. So patient. Told you 8.5 months before I could say I made it clean. Or I had a couple days clean. And so when that happened, when I knew I was done, I wanted to help kids. And remember Rich was saying, you're going to help so many kids. And I didn't know what he was talking about, but I can see now what he meant. So I came up with this drug-free program called Sly Dog, which was my nickname in high school. And I came up with a motto, drug-free, that's me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this animated cartoon character to all the elementary schools in the state of Utah. And I'm going to share my story. And I'm going to teach these kids to help people and to never touch drugs. Wow. It ended up being the most sought-after #1 drug-free program in the state of Utah. And this was right in the middle of DARE. So I was going head-to-head with DARE. But my program was so much more extensive and more powerful. And we were just talking about this before. I have great memories of Tooele because I did that program at Stansbury Park Elementary School. Yeah. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Really? I signed more autograph at Stansbury. Seriously, I was like this rock star to these kids. I'm not kidding you. They're like, sign a Sly Dog, sign a Sly Dog. All right, I was signing Sly Dog, right? It was incredible.
It's true, I bought one of those on eBay.
Yeah, for $4, right? I ended up speaking over the next 5 years to 250,000 kids.
Wow.
And what was so cool about it, too, parents would come up to me and say, my kid loves your program, what you're doing in our school. Thanks for doing that. Would you meet with my kid one-on-one? I'm like, yeah, sure. I didn't know what I was doing. They're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll meet with them. So I start meeting with these kids one-on-one and just helping these kids, have more self-esteem and to believe in themselves. And it was crazy. And that's how my life coaching started.
Wow.
And I have now done, over the last 30 years, close to 17,000 sessions.
Wow.
Since then. I'm now a counselor at Wasatch Recovery Treatment Center. I've been there for over 7 years. I still do life coaching. I see anywhere from 20 to 25 clients a week just with that. I do podcasts. I get to be on these amazing podcasts with guys like you. I've written a couple books. I just pinch myself. I get to do speaking events and share my story. I just sit there and go, are you kidding me? And I look back, and when Rich was saying, you're going to help so many people. And I was like, what are you talking about? Whoa. I told him to stop talking like that. Now looking back, I can see what he meant, but I had no clue what this would lead to. And so, I've been now clean 31 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, on August 5th, just this past August 5th was 31 years clean, and here I am. And I know that was a long way to share my story. Hope that was okay for your listeners, but I'm telling you, and I've learned some amazing principles and stuff that we can maybe talk about as well. But that's kind of the quicker version of my story.
That is amazing. And so you still keep in touch with Rich?
Yes. Oh yeah. Rich, honestly, he's one of those guys that he'll tell you exactly how it is. He doesn't mess around. That's what I love about him. I didn't love it at the time, but I'll never forget. He says, this will be the hardest thing you'll ever do. Getting clean. And then, when he saw that I was going to be in a position of helping kids and people, I'll never forget this too. He said, the hardest thing for you to do, Todd, will be to practice what you preach. And I knew what that meant. Yeah. But I found myself, as I was telling kids, or if I was speaking to an audience at a speaking event, when I would say something, I would catch myself, am I doing this? I'm asking these guys to do this. Am I doing it? And I'm so glad Rich told me that, because he was basically challenging me. Make sure whatever you're saying, you're living it. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, he became my mentor. He took me under his wing, and if it wasn't for him, I probably still wouldn't have made it, because it was just good to have that support. And we're still friends to this very day.
And the Lemonade Girl?
Yeah, Lindy. Yep, Lindy is amazing. This girl is amazing.
That's cool.
I'm telling you what. She knows everybody. When I say that, I'm not even kidding. She says her calling in life is to connect people. And I believe it. She knows everyone. She's positive. She's beautiful. She's smart. And she sends clients to me all the time. She's like my best marketer. Wow. She's out there just sharing her side of the story. Yeah. And she's been wonderful. She's fantastic. But we stay in touch. And I talk to her often. Yeah.
That's way cool. So if you were to come across yourself as a teenager or in your early 20s, if you were to just come across yourself, somebody that's in that same spot, what advice would you give them?
Wow, that's a great question. And that's an easy for me to answer, because back then I believed something was wrong with me. Mm-hmm. I believed I was, because of that voice. I'm less than, I'm no good, I'm pathetic. And I think your listeners, everyone out there can relate with what I'm saying, because we all have it. And unfortunately, some kids have that negative narrative way worse than others, because maybe they've been abused, maybe they've gone through a tragic event, or they've been bullied or whatever. And so they can relate with that. But I used to walk around believing something was wrong with me. So if I could go back to my younger self, the message is clear. And it's the most powerful message I share with my clients to this very day. I call it the greatest truth. And it's, there's nothing wrong with you, Todd. But I would tell myself up in here, the narrative was, no, there's something wrong. And because belief dictates the way I behave, right? That's a principle. So when we believe we're less than, we will do behaviors to try to mask that or to try to avoid that, right? One of my favorite quotes, I have another quote in my office where when my client sits down, they see it right above my head. And it says, the most delightful surprise in life is to suddenly recognize there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
And it is powerful when you recognize that. It's a game changer. It really, truly is. And that's really what I try to help my clients do, is to start realizing there's ultimately nothing wrong with you. Yeah. And so that would be the message that I would share to myself back, if I could go back. That would be the message.
I think that's amazing. And you think about it.
Excuse me.
Every one of us come here with a different path.
Yep.
I mean, we take different paths. We're different individuals. We're unique. And really, it's that diversity, I think, that makes this whole game of life interesting.
Right.
You know, if we were all, you know, the same, what would that do?
Yeah.
You know? And so all of us do come with unique gifts and unique things to bring to the table.
For sure.
And you definitely have done that. And now looking back, think about all the people that would not have had Todd if you had quit when you first thought it.
Yeah.
And
and for people who feel like they're in a dark place and that there's no hope, I'm proof that if you'll stick it out, that it does get better. It may in the moment feel like it never will. And I think people who get to that hopeless mindset, they have this belief it ain't getting better. It will never get better, but it will. It is hard. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. At times it can be really hard. But this is the moment that we as individuals need to reach out. You know, we need to reach out to people when we're struggling. But what's hard is in those moments, that's the last thing we want to do. It's unfortunate. But we get nervous. We think that they can't help. But boy, I'm telling you, listeners, if you're in that spot, if you're in that mindset, just reach out. Just tell someone, and you don't have to even explain. Just say, maybe you need to just cry on someone's shoulder, or just tell them you need help. And maybe there's no even conversation. They're just there to sit there and hold you for a second. Maybe that's all we need to help us get us past this, kind of dark mindset and that dark feeling that we may be going through.
And I think for most people, when you get in that point where you feel that something's so wrong with you and that life is so bad, you kind of lose all that peripheral vision, and it just becomes ultra focused on that one problem or the one thought or that voice in your head.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when that happens, it's so hard to see clearly. And
it really is.
When we isolate, we only make things worse because, again, there's something about humans that we crave that connection. We crave having somebody actually know us, know what we're going through, and
I'll add to that I really believe we're never more fully alive than when we're connected.
Yeah, 100%.
And when we're sad and depressed, whether it's through drugs or alcohol or just because of stuff we've gone through, what we do is we tend to isolate. So what we do is we cut off connection. But your body and your mind and your heart and everything inside of you is yearning for connection.
Yeah.
And so that's why that's when we have to maybe dig deep and break out of that isolation and do the hard thing and connect with someone, you know. And like you said, we're all going through something. Mm-hmm. And I think when we reach out to connect with someone, they feel a connection too at the same time, because they're probably going, yeah, I can relate because I've gone through something similar.
Yeah.
You know? So.
And that's the thing. I think we always think that we've got it worse.
Exactly.
You always think that your problems are so heavy or so dark that there's nobody that would understand. And when you actually connect with people, you find out that people have had it far worse than you. And
exactly.
And there's something about being there for other people that takes your focus off those dark thoughts.
Absolutely.
And everything you're going through. So if you could go back and change what you went through, would you?
No, I'm so glad you asked that question. I always say this to my clients. If I could go back to my almost 10 years of addiction, okay? You know, if I look at because it really kind of started at age 11 when I started just sipping on some of that booze, you know. If I could go back to my addiction and say something to it, I would say thank you. I'd give it a big hug, and I'd say thank you. Because, and I'll say why, because I'm sitting here talking to you, John. Had I not gone through any of that, I wouldn't have been in a position to help someone, right? I really believe that addiction is your wake-up call to your greatness. Adversity is your wake-up call to your greatness. It's trying to wake us up to go, hey, no, you're better than this, you can get past this, and when you do, you're going to be in a position to help someone now, right? Yeah. And so, I would not change a thing. And I'm grateful that I went through it. Now, I'm lucky I made it out alive, and I don't wish that on anybody. But if you're going through a trial right now and a struggle, or even if you're caught in addiction, that if you keep reaching out and getting that help, I promise you pretty soon you're going to be in a position to now you're going to turn around and give back and help someone. And one of the things I want to point out, if you take the 12 steps of AA, if you master the first 11 steps of AA, you're going to drink again. If you master step 12, you'll never touch another drop. Step 12 is reach out and help someone else. So when I was giving that money away to that little girl at the lemonade stand, that was step 12. That was me giving it away. I didn't know it at the time, the impact that was going to have, but I made that girl's freaking decade. Yeah. But me giving that away, what it did to my heart, it was like expanded threefold. It was amazing. And so, yeah, I know it's maybe a long way to answer that question, but I would not change a thing.
Well, and you never stopped with step 12 because you're still doing it.
Still doing it.
I mean,
yep.
Doing it with Sly Dog.
Yep. Still
doing it with your podcast. And I think probably one of the, one of the greatest days you'll have is when you have left this life and you actually look back and realize your impact, because you've touched people for the day that you became clean.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine will continue till you're an old man.
Yeah, I'm going to do it till I die. I'm passionate about what I do, and I always feel like, not that I feel like an obligation. I don't want to say that way because it almost feels like, I'm obligated. No, I feel honored, and I feel grateful that God saved my life. I got to give that credit. And again, whether your listeners believe in God or a higher power, if you call it the universe, I know a lot of people struggle with that, but God for me reached out and helped me, and He worked through Rich and other people along the way, Lindy as well, and many other people. And my parents, they're so proud of me at this point when they see. And I love my parents. They've been so good through this whole process as well. And I got my brother and my sister, and I'm married now. I have 4 kids, and my wife and my children. I got a granddaughter now, and
nice.
And it doesn't mean life has been all roses the whole way through. I mean, I've been through my ups and downs, and I still have my struggles. Yeah. But I when I do that, I've basically committed to myself that I will reach out to someone when I'm struggling so I can connect.
And if you'd stopped living when you first thought about it,
oh wow,
none of that would have ever happened.
None of it. Yeah.
And when you're looking in your grandkids' eye, you realize where you've come from and where you're at.
Right, for sure.
Well, man, I appreciate you for coming out here. I appreciate you for sharing your story. I know it's your story, and so maybe sometimes that feels like you're rattling off the same old news. But let me tell you, when I heard your story, I'm sure it wasn't the first time you'd told your story, and it touched me. I went out and I bought your books.
Oh, thank you.
I've followed your podcast, like I said, since probably close to the beginning, and I get something out of it every week. So thank you for what you do. Oh, and I guess if I was going to give a challenge to any of the listeners today, it would be take a lead from Rich. And, man, when you're inspired to be that
for sure.
connection to somebody, reach out. Be that connection because that made a world of difference.
Yeah.
And we can be that difference for somebody else if we're paying attention and we have empathy and love for people that we surround ourselves with. I think you can be that rich to somebody.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that would be my challenge to everybody today is be aware. Be aware of those around you because we don't know what people are going through.
Exactly.
And if you've listened to this podcast and you're in a place where you're struggling, you're depressed, you're having those scary thoughts, don't stay isolated. Reach out to somebody. Find that person you trust. Find somebody that can hear your deepest, darkest, like Bishop Taylor. You got to find that person that you can connect with and lay it on the line and know that they're not going to judge you. If you don't have that person, reach out to the Lifeline. Call 1-800-273-8255.
Yes.
Because they are there 24/7, 365 days a year. Reach out to somebody. Make it known what you're going through because there are people that want to help. There are people that will be there for you day or night. And so please make that connection. And Todd, before we go, what's the best way for people if they want to get in touch with you for life coaching, to have you speak at a corporation or whatever? What's the best way for people to find you?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I have a website. It's ToddSylvesterInspires.com. And then my email is todd@ToddSylvesterInspires.com. And did I say that right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it sounded weird when I said it out loud because I haven't said it very often. But and I'll even give you my phone number. I don't care. I love talking to people. Even if you just want to call and reach out to me. My number is 801-870-4412. Feel free to reach out to me if you're struggling or if you need some advice or whatever. But my website, and then I'm on all the social media platforms at TS Inspires. You can check me out there as well. You can DM me there if you need to. I'd be willing to talk and help anyone who reaches out.
Well, I appreciate you for who you are, and so glad that you made it through what you went through, because there are so many that don't. Yeah. And it's amazing that you're here today. And like I said, I'm grateful for you coming out to Tooele. Got here in the dark this morning, and
sun's up now.
Sun's up now, and as you drive home, you'll get to see how beautiful it is out here in Tooele.
For sure.
And we want to give a shout out again to all the listeners. Thanks for coming back week after week. As I watch those numbers go up on a weekly basis, it makes me feel good, because I know you're not coming for me. You're coming for these incredible guests that we have, and to hear their stories and where they've been and where they're going. And so I appreciate all of you. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Share it with somebody that you might think could use to hear the message. So easy to do those things. Yeah. Check out Todd's at Todd Sylvester's Belief Cast. It's amazing. So make sure you go on to it, subscribe to that as well, because it's been something that's really helped me as I've listened to it. And finally, I want to give a shout out again to GTM Builders. Couldn't ask for better partners in this podcast to allow us to record in this beautiful model home, have that luxury to share their space with us, and check them out at gtmbuilders.com. And again, this episode's brought to you by A. Warner Homes Real Estate. So if you're in the market thinking about buying or selling, reach out to them at 801-867-5078. And thanks again, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.
See ya.